Hi, I'm Sharon Winsmith, a tax attorney, active investor, and your go-to resource for proven investment and tax planning strategies. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about a question I commonly get in relation to the buy, borrow, die strategy, which is how do you handle interest payments on your SBLOC? So if you don't know what buy, borrow, die is and you don't understand or have a good background on that strategy, I highly recommend you check out my other videos. It is the best tax planning strategy out there and absolutely nobody knows about it. So go out there and learn about buy, borrow, die, and then come back to this video so that you can understand some specifics to the mechanics of how this strategy works. So also, when you're doing buy, borrow, die, a common approach or way that we implement that strategy, especially those of us who aren't building the next Amazon like Jeff Bezos, is by using SBLOCs. SBLOCs are a very good tool for building wealth. It is one of the best, I think, forms of good debt available to you and out there. It's a great way to implement the strategy of be your own bank without getting involved with whole life insurance policies. So again, if you don't know what SBLOCs are, even if you decide SBLOCs aren't right for you and you don't want to use that strategy, you have to know what it is. And again, this is not something your CPA or financial advisor is ever going to talk to you about. There's a number of different reasons, starting with that they don't really know about SBLOCs or understand the strategies of buy, borrow, die, or they don't want to tell you about them because if your financial advisor lets you start using SBLOCs, that's going to decrease their commissions. So you got to understand this stuff yourself. And I'm going to explain to you how to handle interest payments on SBLOCs. It's going to be a really quick video. I want to point out that if there's any time I record a video and there's something that I don't explain well or just kind of assume that you know, please put something in the comments about what you want me to explain further, and I'll do additional videos in the future if I get enough comments in that way. But I kind of sometimes make assumptions. I assume this was pretty straightforward as far as what to do with the interest payments, but it wasn't because I kept getting this comment over and over and this question over and over. So I'm going to talk to you about what to do as far as handling interest payments on your SBLOCs. So quick refresher, SBLOCs are securities-based or securities-backed line of credits. It is essentially where you are borrowing against your portfolio of stocks or stocks and bonds. So again, if you don't know what SBLOCs are, go check out my other videos. You should understand that. I don't view it as very risky to use SBLOCs if you know what you're doing and you're a smart investor, but a lot of people use these types of things and get themselves in trouble. So this is not investment advice. I am not telling you to use this strategy. I am explaining to you just from an educational standpoint what the strategy is and how to handle a certain aspect of it. So once we know what SBLOCs are, we understand that it is basically a loan. It works very differently than most loans in a lot of cases that I'm going to talk to you about, but it is essentially just a loan. You are borrowing against your stocks or bonds. I say stocks because I don't invest in bonds, but you can borrow against bonds as well. So I've now got this loan outstanding against my stock portfolio. Obviously, I have to pay the bank back that loan and they're going to charge me interest. People make the mistake of saying that it's really high interest on SBLOCs right now. I'm paying, low sixes, very, very much less than 7%. A lot of people make the claim that it's hard, a lot higher than that, but you should shop around for interest rates. And I'm happy to pay pre-tax 6% interest because think about, typical interest rates on business loans and other forms of debt. SBLOC interest rates are very comparable to mortgages. Right now, I'm paying a lot less on my SBLOC than I would if I had a mortgage. So don't let people tell you that the rates are too high right now. They're not. If you know what you're doing, I don't think this is a risky strategy. And if you understand how the strategy is supposed to work and how you can make money off of it by, thinking about the arbitrage from what you're doing, by borrowing against one investment to invest in a secondary investment, then again, I don't think this is necessarily a very risky approach if you implement it properly and understand what you're doing. So we've got to pay interest on that loan. How do we make those interest payments? We've now got a loan outstanding, so we've got to pay interest on it. I don't know why this shouldn't be super controversial. Anytime you take a loan, you've got to figure out a way to pay interest on it. If you borrow against your house, you've got to have the money to pay the mortgage. So I don't really care how you pay the interest. I mean, it doesn't matter to me. It's whatever makes the most, smart financial decision for you. There's really no right or wrong way to use this strategy as long as you can afford the debt service. But one thing to keep in mind with SBLOCs is that, and I'm speaking about the typical fact pattern with respect to like how my SBLOC works. Every bank is going to have different nuances, but my SBLOC interest is not required to be paid currently. And that's the typical case in practice. So you don't have to pay anything on the SBLOC. The principal and the interest just accrues a principal. It's just added to principal. Yes, there are daily accruals, sometimes monthly, but daily. So you've got to watch out for that. Compounding can work against you the same way it can work for you. And, it can get really ugly the same way it can be a beautiful thing if you invest properly. So keep in mind your SBLOC interest can be added to the principal, but keep in mind that it accrues daily. So it's not the same as if you're getting annual returns of X%, that's not equal to an SBLOC interest rate. So you got to watch out for that and, take that into account. So you can pay the interest off currently if you just feel you should. You can pay down the principal balance if you want to, or you can just leave it outstanding for your entire life, which a lot of people do that. So you don't necessarily have to pay anything down. And I think that blows people's mind. They think, people have got to be paying down their SBLOC. Well, no, they don't. The whole point in buy, borrow, die is that you were going to go sell that stock, invest in something else, or do whatever you wanted with that money and pay the tax when you sell the stock. So the point of the buy, borrow, die strategy and using an SBLOC is that I can borrow against that stock instead of selling it, have the liquidity, avoid having to pay tax on the appreciation, but still get the upside in that investment. So that's the beauty of it. And so why do I care if it's staying outstanding? I don't care if the loan is outstanding for the rest of my life, as long as it doesn't get to, the interest isn't accruing at some rate that I can't keep up with my secondary investment. So we know we borrow against our stocks to invest in something else. Let's talk about just examples of ways that you can pay back the interest. So again, keep in mind, I don't care how you pay back the interest. It doesn't matter. You just have to be responsible enough to understand that this is a form of debt. You either pay it back, currently, let it sit outstanding, just make sure it doesn't get out of control. You've got to keep into account the daily interest accrual. So leave it outstanding, let it accrue. This is typically my strategy. I don't want to own the stocks. I only own the stocks because I can borrow against them by using an SBLOC. So I'm happy to leave it outstanding, let it accrue into the future. I watch it, make sure it doesn't get out of control with the interest rates, and you don't have to pay anything off. So you don't have to pay off an SBLOC. I think I cannot stress that enough. People, there's something about the psychology, they just can't handle around it, but you don't have to pay it off. As long as, and the one caveat to that is that you've got to, make sure you have enough securities to meet the maintenance margin requirements. So you can't let it get too high as compared to your portfolio, because you could have a margin call. So you've got to watch that. If you don't understand about that, you've got to watch my other videos or take my course on buy, borrow, die. You've got to be able to maintain that. But there's no issue with letting it stand, keep it outstanding, let it accrue, as long as you're investing the money at a rate that, you're not bothered by the daily accruals. You can pay down the interest with secondary investment income. A lot of people do this. So you might borrow, against your stocks, invest in a real estate fund. That real estate fund's going to kick off, rental income every month or, every quarter, however often the fund pays you. Or if you want to go out and buy real estate yourself, whatever it is, use that secondary investment income to pay down your SBLOC, interest and principal. Really it's both. It can be a business. A lot, if you're going to go out and buy a business, one of the first places you should look is to borrow or take an SBLOC yourself before you go to any bank. It's going to charge a much higher interest rate. Look at rates on an SBA loan right now. Look at rates on a bank loan right now as compared to an SBLOC rate. And, you're always going to want to go for the lowest interest rate possible. So, invest in a business, use that business income from the business you bought to pay off your SBLOC. So that's option 2. Option 3, and a lot of people do this, is they don't do a drip election and they let, the dividends do start to pay down the SBLOC over time. So I know this is a popular strategy. I've done this at times when, I don't want my SBLOC balance to get too high. I never let it get too high. I've never come close to a maintenance margin requirement. And I've weathered some pretty big downturns in the stock market. So you just got to be smart. You got to understand what you're doing. I cannot stress that enough. You've got to understand what you're doing and how to monitor those maintenance margin requirements to make sure you don't have a margin call. But you could not have a drip election, let your dividends start to pay down the SBLOC balance over time. Yes, that's slow, but it's just, again, it's what's your preference. I mean, I don't care what you do. It's whatever your own preference is for this. Also for pay, this goes back to, I don't care what you pay it with. If you have other disposable income, if you're, a high salary employee, or if you're a business owner and you're making a lot of money, just pay it down with your other disposable income should you so choose. You should always put money to the most productive use. And so I don't necessarily believe that would always be paying down the SBLOC, but to each their own. And if you want to use whatever sort, if you inherit money from your aunt, use that to pay. I mean, it doesn't matter. Whatever source of money you have, that's how you pay down the SBLOC. If you are someone who, is borrowing, but you don't have any other money and you probably shouldn't be doing this strategy. So, you have to understand what you're doing. It shouldn't be super controversial about how to pay down the interest, how to pay down the principal. You don't have to, as long as you're smart, disciplined, and understand how to watch it and understand what you're doing. Make sure things don't get out of control, but pay it off with whatever you want, or don't pay it off. Leave it outstanding for the rest of your life. It really doesn't matter. You can use this strategy. People use this strategy, all, variations of this. So I've done a combination of 1 and 3 before in my past, favoring number 1 because that's, to me, the most productive use of the strategy. But I really understand the ins and outs of SBLOCs and buy, borrow, die. If you're someone who doesn't, you probably shouldn't be doing it in the first place, but you want to be very careful. So again, a lot of this is psychology about how, comfortable you are with it. But I just wanted to record this video because I get this question all the time about this. And hopefully this clears up any confusion about how, SBLOC interest and principal payments work.